the second-year charity gala. By Independi 16, on EU3. Episode 6, Chapter 3, Quick Thinking.
I can help, Shouta cried, pulling his head of white and red hair from behind a pillar to lock eyes with Eklis, the hero who had just sent him a dismissive glare and jumped away, moving the furthest fight from the edge of the room. With a tug of his sleeves, Jirou dragged him back into cover. I hope you have an actual plan, Todoroki, because I don't think would be much help if we go in blind. Shouta clenched his teeth and sighed. Also, we need to get the others. We're too isolated here. Can you see anyone else in our class nearby? Jirou whipped her head back and forth to look at the people around them. The two of them were mostly surrounded by businessmen and women, stuffed into suits and clenching their knees. Shouta was able to make out a couple of journalists, some of the catering staff the school had hired for the event, and some students from the management course, but nobody from Class A or B, for that matter either. It wasn't surprising, though. One of Yaoyorozu's wealthy relatives had started talking about her insane topic with Shouto and Jirou, and they couldn't follow. And so they had been heading for the food table to pass the time when all hell broke loose. The rest of their classmates had probably still been chatting with reporters by the door. No, Shouto admitted. Then we should be the ones protecting the civilians, right? Yes. Then we shouldn't be leaping into the middle of the fight, the villains, and leave these guys unprotected, right? You can say that. Jirou rolled her eyes at him. She opened her mouth to give some snarky remark, but was cut off by a sudden gust of wind that swept her hair into her face. Shouta turned to find the source, a villain with an air manipulation quirk. He was tall, but not very built. He clearly relied on his quirk for power and strength against his opponents. He had a shock of bright white hair, which felt strange to his shoulders and fluttered in an artificial breeze. The fringe was held out of his face with a bobby pin, revealing his narrowed amber eyes, which were currently looking down on Eklis, who had been knocked over by the wind and was being pushed back with so much force he couldn't pull himself back up. The villain took a step forward, knife in hand. Before he knew it, Shouta was up and running. He could hear Jirou let out a noise of disapproval behind him, but it was blatantly ignored, so he had surprised when a hand wrapped around his wrist and yanked him back. Look, he's fine. Jirou gestured to where Eklis had ridden. He was directing lasers through his eyes at the villain, who was back on the defensive. This didn't last long, though, because within seconds the villain had knocked Eklis back down. He wasted no time gloating. The villain strode purposefully to the edge of the room, just a few meters from where Jirou and Shouta were behind their pillar. There was no time to react. A civilian was dragged out by the collar. A blonde girl, from management course. Shouta didn't recognize her, but it seemed Jirou did, because she hissed, Nagami! And her grip on Shoto's arm tightened. A knife was pressed to the girl's throat. This is the point where you give up, hero. The villain's voice was scratchy as he said this, chuckling. Eklis raised his hands non-threateningly and led forward slightly. Put the knife down. I don't have to settle this violently, but I will. Violence sounds good to me. His booming laugh echoed to where Shouto and Jirou sat, still stock in the shadows behind the pillar. The villain momentarily moved the knife to gesture in Eklis' direction. It was as if time stopped. The shouts and crashes from the other fights nearby fell away. Shouto's whole focus on the single man. That single knife. That single split-second opportunity when the knife was held up in the air rather than threatening the girl's life. He couldn't feel or hear anything else. Not Jirou's sudden intake of breath, not the girl's, Nagami's, sobs of terror in the man's grip. And he couldn't hear a word the villain was spouting. He could just see the knife. He didn't move a muscle. He didn't need to. A trail of ice shot from his right foot, splintering across the marble floor in a singular trajectory. It raced up the villain's leg. It encircled his torso in a single-minded mission. And the trace of the bare flesh of his forearm until half of the man's body and the knife were encased in ice. The villain seemed at first confused, then enraged, then terrified. The girl didn't need to be told what to do. She was already wrenching herself from his limp grip and diving for cover. "Here, I've got you." Jirou recovered first. She darted out and took the girl's hand, putting her to safety. Shouto stared, a glance at her. Reluctantly, Jirou nodded, and Shouto took a step around the pillar to join the battlefield. "What the fuck is that, tweep?" the villain cried, hitting his frozen arm with his free hand in an attempt to crack the ice. He didn't seem to be making any progress, though. The villain certainly realized this as well, because he shifted his gaze to where Shouto stood, arms held in front of him in anticipating an attack. With a flick of his free wrist and an enraged shout, the villain sent a powerful scream of air into Shouto's direction. He quickly formed a bank of ice behind him. As the full force of the gust hit him, strong enough to topple him over, Shouto held his ground thanks to the wall of ice at his back. "Excellent. Would you let me help?" he asked the hero. As much as he liked to fight immediately, Aizawa-sensei had drilled several rules of multiple hero fights into his class. The first being that cooperation was absolutely crucial. He needed to make sure he and Exless were on the same page. The hero glanced between him and the villain, grumbled a little, but nodded. The villain turned his attention away from the two of them, instead shifting to shout at one of his allies. "Oi, Heatwave! Get the shit out of my arms, will you?" This was directed to a tall, blonde woman with amber eyes, that narrowed into a scowl at the wind villain's words. She rolled her eyes and hopped over, leaving the hero she was fighting. Shouto recognized him as Kurogirman, to be the topped over by a huge, half-tiger villain twice his size. Heatwave took only a couple passages and a graceful hop before she reached towards with glowing red hands to melt the ice. During this exchange, Shouto and Exless had shifted into defensive stances. "You think I'm scared of you, huh, kid? Think you're some big shot just because you got some fancy hero school? You should be scared of me." The wind villain puffed out his chest as much as he could, with the ice still half melted, pointing an accusatory finger in Shouto's direction. Shouto raised his eyebrows. This seemed to anger the villain more. He sputtered and cried, "You cocky little brat! You don't know who you're dealing with!" Heatwave poked him in the side, a motion, with Uraraka had taught him, Shouto universally meant, "Shut up now." But the wind villain ignored her. "They call me Windsurfer, 'cause I could use water particles in the air to make wind currents. It won't be long before people shake in fear just at the mention of my name. You scared yet?" Shouto was so busy watching the villain in case of a sudden attack that he hadn't realized Jirou was still nearby until she stepped forward beside him and snorted. "You're not exactly scary. More stupid, really, since you literally told us how your quirk works." Windsurfer's eyes bulged. There was a few patches of ice left on his arm, but he didn't seem to care since he shoved Heatwave out of the way and sent both arms in Jirou's direction, carrying with them both his shouts of fury and a violent torrent of wind. There was so much fanfare behind the villain's attack that Jirou had plenty of time to nearly dodge it unscathed. She sent him a shriek. Windsurfer screeched. It was at this moment that the strange settlement that had been shifted and shattered. Jirou leaped forward to fight the wind villain herself, and Exless peeled away his eye patch to target Heatwave with the laser eye, leaving Shouto in the middle to provide support whenever one of them needed it. It wasn't a position he typically trained in, but recently in lessons, Yagi-sensei had them rotating positions in team exercises, which Shouto was grateful for. X-Laser's laser shot through and would have been aimed at Heatwave's shoulder, but she had been lunging forward and ended up taking off a chunk of her hair. Both she and Exless looked up the charted locks of blonde hair fluttering to the ground in frozen shock. In a moment of rage, the villain's whole body stretched across a small gap, her glowing hand outstretched. Its trajectory was straight in the line of his right eye, currently vulnerable without the protection of his eye patch. The hero was just as shocked as Shouto, and he lurched backwards rather than use his quirk, likely a moment of instinct rather than a conscious choice. Shouto's fighting instincts, however, had been beaten black and blue out of him since he was 4. Moments like this, he really managed to show the stark difference between his terrifyingly danger-ridden childhood and whatever kinder upbringing Exless had been lucky to receive. He felt most comfortable in a crisis, and in a life or death situation. His body didn't try to run anymore. And Deborah had taught him early on that running was futile, especially when running from a villain who could burn you with a single touch. So maybe somewhere in the back of his head, when he saw Heatwave slip graciously and fall face first on the sheet of ice he had sent out without even realizing it, he felt a vindictive sense of joy at the idea that could be Endeavor one day. Not that he'd ever say that much aloud. However, no matter how hastily his body reacts, there's always going to be some time lag. The time it takes for the ice to cross the floor. And in that tiny slither of time, Heatwave's red-hot palm managed to lightly graze the side, down the right side of Exla's face. The next thing he registers was Exla's cry of pain, and he darted forward to help the hero, just as he said he could. Heatwave was back on her feet. Shouto's left arm shot up with a barrier of fire. It dissembled in seconds. But the meaning was clear. Back off. He turned his attention to Exla's injury. The hero was clutching his face, more specifically, his right eye. I can't open it. He hissed at Shouto. Without opening my eye, my quirk will be useless in this fight. I have to stick to hand. With a stiff nod, Shouto created a pebble of ice in his right hand, his first aid training kicking in. He placed his left hand over it, healing it into water formed just below room temperature, before pouring it over his right side of Exla's face. I'm sorry I can't do more. I haven't been able to figure out forming running water yet. We should get you to a tap. He went to form some more water, but the hero put an arm out to stop him. Exla gruffly chuckled. I gotta beat these villains first. I'll be fine for now. Shouto opened his mouth to retort, having his first-hand experience at how carefully a facial burn needed to be treated, especially around the eye, but he was cut off by the sound of Jirou crying out behind him. She had been fighting hand-to-hand with Windsurfer, seeming reluctant to use her quirk, and despite being well-trained, she had blown back by the villain's quirk and into a pillar behind her. Shouto exchanged a meaningful look with Exla. He hurried over to help. With the side of his foot, he set up another temporary shield to block out Surfa's attack. Shouto dropped to his knees and inspected Jirou. She didn't seem to have hit her head, but her left shoulder had scraped against a marble pillar and seemed to be bleeding. Ugh, I wish I'd just worn a suit like I wanted to. Jirou complained, grabbing Shouto's arm to pull herself up. Though I suppose you don't expect a villain attack at every party you go to? Maybe we should. She snorted. Maybe you should stop worrying about me and kick that guy's ass. Wordlessly, Shouto followed her gaze. The wind villain had been using her size to crack the ice with his bare hands. The barrier was close to shattering. Jirou dusted off her knees and stretched her arms over her head dramatically, glaring at the villain in a silent challenge. This was the last straw. With another cry of anger, he bursted through. Shouto stepped in front of Jirou and sent a wave of ice just as Windsurfer pushed a gust in his direction. To his surprise, the breeze managed to warp the way the ice formed. Although its general shape was headed towards the villain, there were shards of ice which stretched back towards Shouto, and it had formed closer to him than he intended, almost as though it had been pushed back midair. This was a bad matchup. Okay, I'm cutting this here because I am sleepy as fuck. I don't think you understand. And I'm running on like very few hours of sleep, and then my family wants to take me out to a park? Like besties. What? That's not. I'm sleep deprived. You woke me up at 9. I normally wake up around 12, midday. Right? My schedule is wake up at 12, clean the house, get in my room, record Animal Crossing Let's Play video. Not Let's Play. Oh my god. Here's my alarm. That's my alarm to wake up. Wake up around 11 or 12. I set up an alarm at 11. I always ignore the 11 alarm, and I always wake up at 12. But I can't just do the 12 one because then I won't wake up for the 12 one. Make that make sense. right? But I can't just set up the 11 one and wake up at 11 because I'll end up falling asleep anyways. So I always have to do 11 and 12. I always have to have 2 timers. One an hour before and one during, right? When I want to wake up. At least when it's in terms of sleeping this late. And it's just, I want to wake up to get up in the day. If I have something really important, I'll wake up before my alarm even, sounds. I don't know how the fuck I do it. I just do it. Again, no idea how the fuck I do it. I just do it. I could have 2 hours of sleep under my name and I'll still wake up at that alarm. Before that alarm even hits, actually. And be like, ugh, I gotta wake up. And then like 5 minutes later, the alarm be sounding. Sorry, I'm having Elliot's little cutscene. I'm glad this happened during, the outro and not the actual gameplay. Or not the gameplay, but the actual sound play. Anyways, I am tired. I am going to listen to a podfic while I end up recording what I need to, Stardew Valley gameplay for the videos. I already have this one and then the 8 p.m. slot. I'm recording out of order. I don't give a shit anymore. Because I need to do that. And I'm tired. I'm so tired. I don't think you understand how tired I am. I wanted to stream, but I only have an hour before we probably go to the park. And I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling going to the park today. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. But I know damn well that I'm not gonna be able to deny. I have been literally looking forward to going to the park all week. But like the second it came, like today, go to the park, I don't wanna go. I'm not in the mood. Can I not go? Is that an option? Ugh. I'm so tired. So tired. About this, it is a bad matchup because Shouto, air particles turn ice, and man's moves air particles, so, not good matchup. The next episode's probably gonna be like 10 minutes long. Probably less. I'm gonna be shocked if it even reaches 10 minutes, if I'm gonna be honest. Again, apologies. I'm super tired, and I think I'm beat. I think I still need to record so many videos today. Ugh. Fuck past Echo. Genuinely, with a passion of 1,000 burning stars. 10 million burning stars. Like, why? 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 Oh my god, I remember when I had the small house. I upgraded my house recently. I remember trying to marry, Elliot was a pain in the fucking ass. This was also before I cleared that area, because that area was getting on my fucking nerves. There's some things that just got into my fucking nerves. But, anyways, as I was saying, I don't know what I was saying. I'm actually so tired. Okay, as always, my raindrops. Make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.